Number 1. New Year's night is a time of bliss and celebration, joy to one and all, but one for the duration. But all through the night till the morning after sedation, the lowly eyeball man finds a different sort of elation. Ragged clothes and a face bathed in shadow, 1,000 eyes of empty sorrow. No nose, no ears, and no mouth to swallow. But he sees and he knows, and he devours what he follows. In the icy winter night, a handful of eyes do glow. On a black decayed street, your fate they sow. 100 blinking empty eyes, and all that they know. An unforgiving moon, watched by 1,000 dead eyes below. When you and your friends are out having fun, in the cold and the black, his plan is spun. In the wet and the dark, nobody has yet outrun the eyeball man faceless in the midnight sun. But if you stay out late into the night, walk home not by the sparse ambiguous moonlight. Stay under the glowing lamps, but in spite, you may not be in luck tonight. The eyeball man might follow you home, slip in with you from the night he roams. In the sodden streets and the hanging brome, it'll all be over once it's just you and him alone. So this new year, let this be a warning to one and all, from the sparse green country to sombre the urban sprawl. Do not walk at night while only melancholy moonlight falls, unless you wish for a lonely, peculiar death to be forestalled. Number 2. Pop, 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 pop. It was only 9:45 p.m. and the local kids were already setting off cherry bombs. Lydia expected such, but even so, it startled her to the point of spilling the tea she held in her hand. The hot liquid burned the inside of her thigh, and she cursed under her breath. It was New Year's Eve, and Lydia was spending it the way she always had, alone, curled up with a good book and a hot beverage. The holiday was just another day for her, and although she did make it a tradition to at least stay up until midnight, she felt no need to spend it with her friends or family. She liked the solitude, and often felt awkward around other people. Getting up to wash the tea from her leg, she passed the once vibrant Christmas tree, whose lights were no longer twinkling. The last time the lights were on was Christmas Day. She made a mental note to take it down the following morning, as well as all the other decorations she had around her house. She often wondered why she bothered putting them up anyways. Nobody saw them but her, but old habits die hard. Grabbing a rag from a drawer in the kitchen, she wiped off the spilled tea and examined her thigh. The spot was red, but nothing too serious. The pain would subside quickly, and as long as she kept a firm grip on her mug, she was sure she would be able to get through the night without too many serious injuries, fireworks or not. Just then, the phone rang. Forgetting about the burn and figuring one of her family members was calling to wish her a happy new year, she answered. Hello? She heard laughing in the background, but nobody replied. Hello? She asked again, a little louder. Is Joseph there? It was a woman's voice. Lydia could still hear laughing in the background. I'm sorry, there's no Joseph here. You must have the wrong number. Then, the person on the other end hung up. Lydia took the phone from her ear and made a flabbergasted facial expression. That was rude, she said, and placed the phone back on the receiver. As she made her way back into the living room, she heard laughing coming from the front of the house, immediately reminding her of the phone call she just received. Lydia froze to listen. More laughing, and it was getting louder. She made her way to her front window and peeked outside. To her relief, a group of teenagers were walking up the sidewalk, sparklers in their hands, laughing up a storm, the boys teasing the girls, and the girls giggling their heads off. The street lamps made their shadows bouncy and elongated, reminding Lydia of the shadows she used to see when the power would go out and her family had to rely on candlelight. One of the girls pushed one of the boys gently, knocking him off of the sidewalk and onto the street. "You're gonna get it now," he shouted, and the girl tried to hide behind one of her friends. Lydia let go of the breath she was holding and closed the curtain. She did not miss being a teenager, although a small part of her felt nostalgic at the thought of interacting with the opposite gender. There was nothing like those first butterflies, casual glances, and playful teasing. Smiling to herself, she returned to the couch, sipped her tea, and began reading her book again. About an hour passed before the phone rang again. Thinking, for sure, that it would be one of her relatives this time, she got up and answered. "Hello?" Again, nobody answered, but she could hear what seemed to sound like a party in the background. She could hear glasses clinking together, music playing in the distance, loud conversation, and the occasional noisemaker going off. "Hello?" she asked again, louder still. Then she heard what sounded to be someone shuffling the phone about, and then nothing. The dial tone was the only thing she could hear now, so she hung up again. "What the hell?" she asked herself. Aside from the first phone call she received, Lydia figured someone had accidentally butt-dialed her, letting it go. She returned to the couch. As midnight approached, Lydia grew increasingly tired, but was determined to stay awake. As she read sentence after sentence, her eyelids felt like they were filling with sand, and she would catch herself closing them for a few seconds. She looked at the clock. It was 11:45. 15 more minutes, then I can finally turn in, she said, closing her book and searching for the television remote. Lydia figured the TV would be the perfect distraction as she waited for midnight. Then the phone rang again. Lydia contemplated answering it. It wasn't usual for her to get any calls, period, let alone 3 in a few hours. Wrong numbers or not, curiosity got the best of her, however, and she walked over to the receiver. "Hello?" she asked, in an irritated voice. A loud noisemaker blasted in Lydia's ear. She moved the phone away from her head as quickly as she would have if she touched a hot stove. A man's voice appeared, and he spoke no louder than an angry whisper.
"Happy New Year, Joseph. You never thought I'd do it, but I will."
The man laughed and breathed in deeply.
"Do you like it when things burn, Joseph? They'll try to stop me, but I'll do it. It will be beautiful."
Lydia's brow furrowed. Not knowing how to respond, she said, "Who is this? There is no Joseph here." The man on the other end kept his tone to a whisper and said only one more thing before hanging up.
"You'll burn too."
A woman laughed in the background, and then silence. Lydia slammed the phone down onto the receiver. A chill ran up her spine, and she looked at the clock. It was almost midnight, but she couldn't focus on New Year's when she was shaken to the core. Without really knowing what to do next, Lydia decided to check all of the doors to make sure they were locked, and all of the blinds to make sure they were closed. Her anxiety rose every time a new firecracker went off in the distance, and she kept having to tell herself that it was nothing but kids horsing around and enjoying the holiday. When 11:59 rolled around, Lydia crept back onto the couch and huddled underneath a blanket. She braced herself for the impending firecrackers, and when the clock struck 12, she closed her eyes. Several firecrackers and fireworks erupted in the distance, sounding like a mixture of gunfire and explosions. She jumped at everyone, holding her breath between every pop and snap, closing her eyes and counting the minutes when it would all be over. The main hoopla subsided around 12:30, although she was still shaken up from the prank phone call, if that's what it even was. She decided she would turn off her ringer and go to sleep. Her heart had had enough action for the night, and all she wanted to do was close her eyes and drift off into a land of nothingness for a few hours. As her hand went for the ringer off button on her phone, it rang once again. Hesitant to pick it up, yet too curious to leave it ringing, she answered the phone for a 4th time. "Yes?" she asked with a whisper. It was the same man as before, whispering violently.
Are you ready, Joseph? I can feel the heat already. It's moving through my veins and warming the soul that will soon be damned. Oh, Joseph, the time is now.
Then, what sounded like a loud air horn went off into the phone, and Lydia dropped it to the ground. She could still hear it going off when she picked it up again and slammed it into the receiver. Turning off the ringer, she ran into the back bedroom, shut the door, and jumped onto her bed. She could still hear firecrackers in the distance, but eventually, her heart slowed and she was able to lie down. She wasn't able to fall asleep until around 2 a.m, but she did eventually drift off into the land of nothingness.
I'm here, Joseph. It's happening.
Lydia's eyes fluttered open to the sound of a man talking and the smell of smoke. Startled awake, she found she was lying on her bathroom floor with the door closed. She was unable to process how she got there because panic took over her body. "It's going to be so beautiful, and you won't be able to stop me." A woman giggled, and then Lydia heard what sounded like scratching on the door. She suddenly felt like she was being pressed to death, unable to get up or do anything because of the fear she felt. Unable to get up or do anything because the fear she felt was so strong. After a few seconds, she recognized the voices as the ones she heard on the phone earlier. Lydia heard a loud bang, as if something large had been dropped outside the door, and she jumped, tears beginning to stream down her face, too scared to do anything. She put her hand to her mouth and waited to see if anything else would happen. All the while, the smell of smoke was getting stronger. Lydia felt her stomach drop, more scratching up and down the door, and then the man whispering again.
It's gonna burn. It's gonna burn.
Whoever was on the other side of the door suddenly ran out of the room, so Lydia jumped up and tried the door. Jammed. Something was blocking it from the outside, just as she expected. Lydia pressed her ears against the door and listened. From the distance, she heard the man and woman laughing. "It's getting hot. The flames are spreading." The man screamed. Putting 2 and 2 together, Lydia figured the people in her home were going to burn the house down, with her in it. Looking up at the only other way out, her heart sank. There was no way she would be able to fit through the tiny bathroom window. "Let me out!" Lydia screamed, hoping against hope someone would open the door. The only response she heard was more laughter. In the distance, she heard glass break. Lydia tried the doorknob again and found that it was becoming warm. "Whoever you are, please let me out. I'll give you anything you want. Just please let me out of here." Silence. She pressed her face against the door and felt a slight heat. She turned and faced the mirror, almost not recognizing herself. because the terror in her face made her look completely different. I'm going to die, she thought. What a great way to start the new year. Lydia leaped to her feet and grabbed the toilet tank lid. Without thinking of anything else, she started hitting it against the doorknob, hoping she could somehow break the door open. Smoke started coming through under the door, and Lydia started pounding faster. With every hit, Lydia let out a desperate cry. After a few minutes, Lydia thought she wasn't going to be able to do it, but with one final smack, the doorknob fell to the ground. Lydia pushed the door with all of her strength, but it was futile. Whatever those people pushed in front of the door, it was not going anywhere. In a fit of rage, Lydia slammed the palms of both of her hands on the door over and over, screaming until she started coughing. The smoke and heat coming into the bathroom was beginning to become too much. With resignation, Lydia sank to the floor. Her eyes began to sting, and it was getting too hard to breathe. She was becoming lightheaded. She looked over to the small bathroom window and thought, I could have at least opened it and screamed for help. She closed her eyes, heat enveloping her body. Her final thought before passing out was, who's Joseph? I hope he had a better New Year's Eve than I did. It took 8 minutes for the fire department to respond, but by then, it was too late. Number 3. I think the following occurred in the year 2009 or 2010. I'm not quite sure. For me, it's a sad tradition to spend the night by myself on New Year's Eve. I'm not the party person or the person that loves fireworks, so I just planned my evening to be filled with movies and delicious food. At the time, we had a small white dog. I think it was a mix between a West Highland White Terrier and a Maltese. Basically, a dog with lots of energy and some dominance issues, as well as easily startled and very aware of little noises and stuff like that. That night, on New Year's Eve, it was almost midnight while I was watching a movie when I noticed my dog slowly approaching the kitchen. But it was as if he was suspicious about something he saw or heard. I pushed the pause button and watched as my dog started to growl at the kitchen. To be clear, when I sit on the couch and I look straight ahead, I can only see the dining table from there, and I can't see the actual kitchen. It's an open space, and attached to the kitchen, we have this kind of wooden porch with a door that has a huge glass window looking out to the garden. You know what it's like when it's dark and you look at your garden through a window. It's pitch black. Well, when I'm on the couch, I can't see that part of the kitchen, so that made it even more alarming. He kept growling and acting suspicious, but I didn't dare go up there and actually check out what was going on. And I know that if it was a cat passing over our roof, he would directly go to the porch to bark very loudly and jump up against the window. But this time, it was different. I was just sure that it wasn't a cat. Then, after all of the growling and suspicious behavior, he started barking. At that point, I decided to get out of there, so I opened the door to the hallway. My dog immediately followed me upstairs to my room. I closed my door and kept silent to make sure I wouldn't miss a sound. I was so scared that someone would break in, or that he had seen something that I couldn't. I still get a strange feeling thinking about it. After 20 minutes of listening to every sound possible, I just decided to go back downstairs. I went to sit on the couch again and pretend that nothing happened. I didn't want to think about it. My dog calmed down and didn't seem to act out of the ordinary anymore, so I just hoped for my parents to come home quickly. After a few months, I already forgot about the incident and was living my normal life. Until one evening, my mum and I were watching TV and our dog suddenly began approaching the kitchen again in the exact same way as on New Year's Eve. I was so scared because I had experienced it before. I could tell that my mum was pretty scared too. We just sat there for a couple of minutes, listening to our dog growling. We kept calling him, so eventually he came back to sit with us. That strange, eerie atmosphere continued that evening until my dad entered the living room. It felt as if the presence of something left the room when the door to the hallway was opened. After 2 years, we had to rehabilitate our dog and put him up for adoption because he started getting aggressive towards men. In the end, he even started getting aggressive towards Mum and me. Number 4. I grew up in a large town in Lincolnshire, England. As kids, we used to play in a large wooded area on the outskirts of town called Bradley Woods. In the woods is an ancient-looking abandoned cottage by a pond, and we were told a story about it, which went like this. Hundreds of years ago, a poor woodsman lived in the cottage with his wife and baby. They lived happily until the woodsman was pressed into military service by the local landowner during the English Civil War. The woodsman's wife waited and waited for months for any news of her husband, but none ever came. One New Year's Day, a group of soldiers on horseback came riding through the woods, part of a force that had been plundering the surrounding countryside. Coming across the cottage, they broke in and demanded that the woodsman's wife hand over all of her money and any strong drink that she might have. When she refused, the soldiers beat and abused her savagely before taking the baby and riding off laughing wickedly. From that day on, the woman dressed in black and roamed the woods searching for her missing child, accosting anyone she met and begging them for any news of the baby. She soon earned a reputation as being quite mad, and so people began to give the woods a wide berth. The woodsman never returned home, and the woman continued to roam the woods, desperately searching for her lost baby, until the day she died. Legend has it that her ghost still wanders the woods today, and if anyone is brave enough to walk into the woods on New Year's Day and shout, "Black lady, black lady, black lady, I've stolen your baby," 3 times, the woman shall appear and confront them. Hello everyone, and Happy New Year from SinisterShaf. I hope you enjoyed this New Year special, and there will be more videos up very soon. If you liked this video, remember to like the video, and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And, as always, stay sinister.